We're starting off with our document in the same state it was at the end of the last movie, so if you didn't watch that one first, you may want to go do that now. We've tagged each of the frames in this document that we want to populate with the incoming XML content. And as we mentioned before, we can simply delete the content that's in there right now. I'll just delete some of this stuff because the incoming content is going to replace it anyway. Now, to import the XML file, I'm going to first click on the element that I want to replace, in this case, the entire XML structure, so I click on Brochure at the top of the structure pane. Then I choose Import XML from either the File menu or the Structure pane's Flyout menu. I'll choose the XML file that I want to import, in this case Java Code Sheet 2, from the Exercise Files folder, and I see that I have several options down here. I definitely want to show XML import options. I leave that turned on whenever I'm importing XML. And I also have the option to import into the selected element. Because I chose the element in the structure pane, that checkbox appears. And yes, I want to import into that one. I want to actually replace this with an incoming XML. I then have two buttons here, Merge Content or Append Content, and Merge means actually put it into the selected element. It's sort of a rephrase of this. Put it in here and replace all of this with the new XML. Append means don't replace what's already there, just add it to the end of it. So I don't want to append it here, I actually want to replace what's there, so I'll choose Merge Content. Now I'll click Open, and it gives me the Import Options dialog box. The first thing we notice is that there's a pop-up menu with the same options, and these are just duplicates of the options from the last dialog box. I have no idea why they're here, maybe just in case you want to change your mind at the last minute or something. Let's look at some of these other checkboxes. Some of these are very technical. I don't want to go too far into any of these. I'll just sort of touch briefly on what these things mean. Create link is interesting because if you have an XML file that may change repeatedly, you never know when that information is going to be updated, you may want to link to the file so that when it is updated, InDesign is aware of it and can update your documents automatically. So that's pretty cool. We'll look at that in just a second. I'll turn that on. An XSLT is a way to transform your XML into some other format as you're importing it. So for example, if your XML file didn't have exactly the same kind of structure that you needed in your InDesign document, well, you might want to use an XSLT to transform it. Move items around, delete items, add items, maybe add special static text that you want to appear in your InDesign document, but that you don't have in the XML file itself. That's what you'd use an XSLT for. I don't have one, so I'm going to leave that turned off. Clone repeating text elements is the key to importing hundreds or thousands of pages worth of content with XML. You can actually set up a template so that the text elements will repeat over and over again based on what the information is in the XML. InDesign will take the XML and put it in the same place, then go to the next, and keep repeating those elements until all the data is used up. So that's very useful, but in this case it's not really relevant, so I'm going to turn that off. Now, what happens if you have information in your XML file that you're not using in your InDesign document? Well, you can turn on only import elements that match existing structure. In other words, it will simply ignore anything in the XML file if it doesn't match to the structure in here. Import text elements into tables has to do with having tables in your document. You need a table in your InDesign template first, and you need to tag each of the cells in that table, and you need to have the same tag names in the data inside your XML file. And if all of that's true, then you can actually match one to the other, and InDesign will put that data into a table. It actually sounds far easier than it really is. It's sort of fraught with peril, but that's what that's going to do. Whitespace characters are things like spaces, tabs, returns, that kind of thing. And some people use whitespace inside their XML to format it, maybe indent things, kind of make it look pretty, easier to read. Well, you don't necessarily want that whitespace in your InDesign document, so you can strip it out by turning that checkbox on. Okay, what are we going to do if, let's say, I'll move this out of the way so I can talk about something on the page here. What if there is no third image in the XML? What if the XML file only specifies 2 images on the page? Do you want this to be blank? Do you want to just leave it the way it is? Or do you want to delete it right off the page? And that's what this checkbox does. If you turn that on, it will actually delete anything that's tagged that doesn't exist in the incoming XML. Might as well turn that on. I think I have all the right XML to fill all those, but just in case. And CALS tables, well, let's just say that if you don't know what a CALS table is, then you don't need to know what a CALS table is. So let's leave that turned on and click OK and import that data. As you can see, the new XML file came in just as we were hoping. The title showed up here, all the captions showed up here, images were all swapped out. By the way, these images look a little weird. They look a little colorized, don't they? Well, don't worry about that too much. Let me deselect everything here by clicking out on the pasteboard. If I go into preview mode by pressing W, I can see what the images will really look like. Let me press W again, and you can see the colorized part is only there because we have view, structure, show tagged frames turned on. So if that were not on, we also wouldn't see that colorized part of each of these frames. Anyway, we can see that this came in just fine, but you know what? These items down here are actually bullet points. I don't know if you remember in the previous title, I did not actually make a tag for those bullets in here. I think that bullet element was in this XML file and it wasn't in the original XML file. So it brought those in and it added the tags to my tags panel. So that's kind of clever of InDesign. I appreciate that. The problem is that they're not showing up as bullet points in here. I need to go in and style these bullet tags. And the way I do that, as we saw in the earlier movie, is we go to the flyout menu and we say map tags to the styles. We want to map the bullet tag to a paragraph style in this case, which is bullets. There it is, body bullets. I click OK, and there we go. Immediately, they all update because InDesign's smart enough to go through and say anything that had a bullet tag applied to it, in this case these paragraphs, give it the proper paragraph style. Now what happens if that XML file changes? Let's go back and actually change it. I'll swap over to my text editor. I'm using Text Wrangler. It's a free editor on the Mac. And I'm going to change something. Let's say I'll change the name of this T, just something very simple and obvious. I'm going to change this to my new T name. I don't call it anything you want. I change it there, and then I save this file to disk, and then come back to InDesign, and we see that it's not updated here. But if we go to the links panel, we can see that the XML file is in here. And that's because we turned on that link checkbox in the import options dialog box. And we see that it is modified. Something's been changed here. So if I select that XML and now click on update, everything gets updated, everything gets re-imported throughout the entire document, and we have the new heading. In this case, it was too long for this text frame, so we would then have to edit it some more. So that's it. We now have a working template with tagged frames, and each time the data changes, we simply update the XML file and import it into the InDesign document, or just update the link like we just saw. But what if you've been handed an InDesign document and you need to get the XML out of it, not in? Well, that process is similar, but with some important differences. Let's take a look in the next movie.